Hey, and welcome back to the Emlyn in the Mix podcast, season 3, episode 8. I hope you've had a wonderful week. We are back again with all the latest and greatest of what is happening in the world of music gear and music technology. Now, I hope this podcast is inspiring you. If it is, support link down below. I would definitely appreciate that. And we've got some really cool news today. Now, if you saw the title of this video or podcast, then you'll know we're going to be looking at Cherry Audio's Rackmode, which is super exciting. We're actually going to have a little play around with it. So shout outs to Cherry Audio. Actually, it is a lot of fun, this effects rack mode, and I've made a little funky sort of tune that should help to sort of emulate that vintage vibe, I hope, and we'll see how that all comes together. But that, if you want to skip to the end, you can of course do that and check out Rack Mode by Cherry Audio. However, we've got some pretty cool news to get through for you today. Now, for all of my regular listeners, thank you very much for coming back week to week. I know you're enjoying this podcast. If you want, you can always reach out to me, of course, on all of the socials, links to the socials down below. And we have set up an email for this podcast. I don't know if I've mentioned that before. You can reach out there, emlyninthemix@gmail.com. Now, if you are new to this podcast, of course, what is this podcast about? Well, hopefully I've explained it already in the title, but we basically cover all things music technology and music gear and brand new music news and sometimes old school stuff as well. Anyway, I hope this podcast inspires you to create something amazing. That's the whole point of this podcast. It's not about me blabbering on, although I do like to blabber, and that's why you're here. You want to hear me blabber about some cool stuff. Anyway, let's get stuck into the podcast today. So this is still going. This is from the Bob Moog Foundation, and if you haven't entered already, what are you doing? This, again, no kickback from any of these companies or affiliations at all, except for Cherry Audio today, who have sponsored the podcast and YouTube video today with letting us check out their awesome software. So this one here comes to us from Bob Moog Foundation. And what is it? You can win a vintage mini Moog signed by Herb Deutsch, I'm probably butchering that surname, by the way, one of the co-founders of the early Moog synthesizers. Now, this is a freaking beast. If you were to win this particular synthesizer is worth over $10,000. It has been faithfully restored, so everything's working. You're not just getting like an old hunk of, synthesizer gear, which would still be amazing even if it wasn't working. I know that sounds crazy, but just having that piece of history in your studio. However, this is all working. So the Bob Moog Foundation is thrilled to offer this rare mini Moog synthesizer signed by Herb Deutsch on the occasion of his 90th birthday. Shout outs to Herb. Wow, 90. And what a cool name. Like, you don't hear people called Herb in this day and age. It's actually pretty cool. We should bring that back. Remarked Executive Director Michelle Moog Kusa. We honor Herb for his undeniable place in synthesizer history as the catalyst who inspired Bob Moog to design the very first Moog synthesizer. There you go. Bob could not have achieved his pioneering work without Herb's ongoing careful guidance and insight, starting with their work together in the summer of 1964 and lasting for decades thereafter. We hope the lucky winner of this mini Moog will be deeply inspired by this rare piece of history. Now, I of course have purchased my tickets, and if I do win, I will be sharing this with you as much as possible on the YouTube channel and on this podcast. We'll have a play with it. We'll do a dedicated podcast to this particular synthesizer if I'm the fortunate one to win. However, I want you guys to win too. So please enter and win, and your money goes towards the Bob Moog Foundation, which helps charitable causes like teaching young people music, and it's really cool. It just goes towards going back into the music world. You can read up about it here, what it all goes to, the funds and so forth. But with your chance to win this synthesizer, and if you're watching this VOD cast on the YouTube here, you can see some nice pictures of it. I mean, look, we are going back in time a bit here. There's some videos of Herb playing with it and some other musicians there playing with it as well. And then there's the Inspiring Tomorrow's Innovators, and that's what the Bob Moog Foundation produces. So check that out. I thought it was worthy. I think tickets are $25 each, or you can buy like a pack of 5 or something like that. Anyway, definitely worth checking out. All right, let's move along to our next piece of news here. And of course, Waves. What is Waves doing? Well, last week we spoke about Waves releasing Cosmos, which is a sample finder, and it's actually surprisingly really good, and it's free. And I downloaded it and I was using it last week actually, and it was really helpful because I was doing some work at that time for a radio station who needed quick assets, quick sounds and samples, and I was able to get them using the Cosmos sample finder. Very good indeed. So in the last 7 days, Waves just announced this creative sampler, basically employing the Cosmos sample finding engine. And let me just read a little bit about it here for you. So when you're cooking samples, you want to get creative quickly. The Waves creative sample takes everything fun and exciting about sampling and puts it all inside a fast, easy workflow. Sorry, I was trying to read their marketing script here. With Create, you can turn any sound into an inspiring, playable instrument in seconds with the easiest access to 8 layers of samples, allowing you to stack, mix samples, or split them across your keys, 5 stretching algorithms, voice, beats, melodic, harmonic, and classic, each allowing you to control pitch and time independently, key and beats per minute analysis to get you in tune and in sync with your session in seconds, easy loop, reverse, freeze options, and more for instant control over your sample playback. And in addition, you can shape color and timbre using your built-in filters and ADSR envelopes. You can drag and drop 4 powerful LFO sequencer modulators and 4 ADSR envelopes to almost any Create control. So basically, this is that Cosmos sample finder, but they've just added a synth layer over the top of it. And I don't want to just say just added. Of course, there is a lot more going probably in the back end of this compared to Cosmos. But it's really, really cool indeed. So you can even browse all your loops and one-shots from within Create using the built-in Waves Cosmos. See? AI-powered sample finding, which sorts and auto tags all your samples, and you can audition any sound from within the sampler while the track is playing. That's crazy. So in the context of your session, when you do this, Create will even choose the appropriate time-stretching algorithm for the chosen sample automatically. It's cool. It's using a bit of AI processing. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit there. We'll play this little video back here, just an introduction on Create.
The Waves CR8 Sampler takes everything exciting about sampling and puts it in a fun, easy workflow. Turn any sound into infinite instruments with 5 advanced stretching algorithms. Sync any sample in the right key and BPM instantly. Easily loop, reverse, and freeze with complete control of the pitch, time, and position of your sample playback. Stack up to 8 sample layers or split them across your keyboard. Shape, color, and add movement easily with the drag and drop modulators and ADSRs. On top of that, you get 800 presets, over 2,500 free samples, and the built-in Cosmos AI-powered sample finder. Get creative, fast.
Nice music by Bo Tyler there, and there's an intro price on this at the moment, which is actually insane, and I'm definitely gonna just grab a copy. It's $9.99, and I mean, look, sure, we've already got sample players, like for example, Ableton has the Simpler and the Sampler, both fantastic sample players, and I guess that what we look for as humans, we're always looking for the most efficient or the easiest or the best way to get something done, and it looks like, of course you could probably use your DAW's sampler, inbuilt sampler would probably do the trick, although there's something about this that looks like the workflow is a bit easier, and it does have some extra features like the AI going on in the background, like choosing the algorithm depending on the thing that you've actually loaded. So there are some little special features, but for $9.99, definitely worth checking out Creative Sampler by Waves. Well done to Waves, always outputting the goods. I mean, Waves would have to be the most prolific, one of the most, maybe not the most, but definitely it's up there as one of the most prolific software creators in music technology, music and audio technology. All right, let's move along to our next piece of news before we get to our feature. Actually, there's a couple before we get to our feature here. This is just a quick shout out to our Native Instruments machine users. Actually, they've got this deal. They only ever seem to do this like once a year, so I had to do a shout out on this, but this was that they've got their special on their expansions. Now, if you're looking at expanding or getting more expansions, excuse the pun, expanding your expansions, you hear that first here on Emlyn in the Mix, of course. Expand your expansions. Right now, they have the 9 for 99 deal. 99 deal. Now, if you're watching on the YouTubes, you'll see it says 149. That's Australian. That's Aussie dollars, mate. A little bit different to US dollars, but 99 USD for 9 expansions, which is insane actually, because the expansions, cost, are they 49 USD each? So you're essentially saving like 90% or something crazy. Anyway, I can't do the math. It's a very big saving, very big discount indeed, especially when you put it in Australian dollars. It works out to be like 700 or something dollars off. It's something insane like that. But look, if you listen to this podcast in like 4 or 5 days from now, or even weeks from now, or months from now, hello, people from the future. Thank you so much for listening, but you are missing this deal, and I'm sorry. I tried. I released this on a weekly basis, but that's okay. I appreciate that you're listening to my podcast, especially you future beings who are listening. Maybe you're listening on another planet. Maybe it is literally 2 million years from the date that I recorded this podcast, and you're listening to my humble, docile tones, my very, very nice tones coming to your eardrums. And thank you so much for listening, but this deal is now finished. I mean, it finished 1 billion years ago. What can I say? But if you're here with me now, 2022, what is it, February 20-something, 26, you still got a few days. I think it goes to the end of February 2022. Check it out. We're not going to look at all the expansions there. I just wanted to shout that out. No affiliation, no kickback. Hey, Native Instruments, you want to reach out to Emlyn in the Mix, I'm here for you. You can reach out to your boy. I'll be here for you, you know? What are you doing, Native Instrument? No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, I'm just got a bit hyper. That coffee is good, actually. Support the channel, buy me a coffee, shout me a coffee, whatever you want to do. All right, next, Max for Live instrument. We don't talk about Max for Lives too much, but here we have one that really stood out for me because it is the MPE-enabled holographic synthesizer Chiral, which is built to encourage experimentation through phase shaping, amplitude modulation, and a vast modulation matrix. Craft anything from cinematic pads to inharmonic glitchscapes using the intuitive Max for Live devices with far-ranging sound design capabilities. Now, are you ready to get your glitch on? Are you ready to get your morphosis on? Because this is what Chiral is going to deliver. Let's have a quick listen to this. This sounds actually really phenomenal. I'm just going to play some back for you here. Nice. Yes. Okay, so you're going to get that real drony, real ambient sort of sounding, ambience, I guess was what I was caught for a word there. But, here, we'll play one more back here for you. And you hear there's a lot going on, like you got a lot of wave shaping, a lot of oscillators sort of going in the background. That sounds so good, actually. Wow. Now remember, it's MPE as well, so you can hear there's actually MPE, MIDI polyphonic expression happening here. Sort of in and out. Anyway, I'm not going to play this whole demo back here, this second one here, but you get the idea. It has very good for soundscapes and very evocative sort of sounds, and you got like the bass and the MP and everything else going on. Actually reminds me, we looked at it a couple of weeks ago, that Enzyme expansion for the Roland Phantom, which I really want to get that synthesizer. Like the Roland Phantom, having the ability to add those expansions like the Enzyme is sort of like a multi-layered oscillating soundscaping waveforming sort of stuff. If you're into that sort of thing, I mean, here's a way cheaper version or a way cheaper way of getting it, Chiral for Max for Live by Fours. Very cool indeed. Let's read a little bit more here. So with its evocative user interface, straightforward functionality, and extensive wave shaping options, Chiral encourages you to approach sound design as a search for newness rather than imitation. And Chiral's single oscillator is built around a type of sine wave contortion known as phase shaping. Dedicated size, bend, and fold knobs make it easy to twist your waveform into new shapes, which are visualized in a holographic display reminiscent of a Mobius strip. And waveforms can be smoothed using Chiral's sync dial or given subtle movement with its dedicated jitter modulation. Automate any of these parameters to create textured, evolving pads for a variety of genres like ambient, techno, IDM, and film scoring. And as it's a quick, or just zoom in there if you're watching on the vid here for the podcast. There's a nice video of the GUI, we can see it there. Features phase shaping, oscillated craft complex evolving waveforms, amplitude modulation for deep timbral control, built-in reverb, saturation, and filter for space and color. MP compatibility puts Chiral's expressive potentials at your fingertips. Micro-tuning supports adds another layer of tonal possibility to your sound. An intuitive interface designed for playability and experimentation, and low CPU usage. So that's Chiral for Max for Live by Fours. Check it out if that interests you. All right, let's move along to our next piece of news here. And this is, of course, our main topic for today, and that is Cherry Audio's Rackmode signal processors. Yes, totally exciting indeed. I know the effects plugins are not always the most exciting, but when it's made by a company like Cherry Audio, you got to appreciate they do the best, some of the best analog emulations on the planet. Like, we've checked out the Cherry Audio Mercury 4 and it sounds unbelievable. Like, their emulations are to a T, and Rackmode is going to be no exception. We're going to have a little play with it today. It's a bit of a special podcast. I got a little ditty I made for you guys. I hope it's all right. And we're going to pass the effects through there and have a listen to it. But what is Rackmode, and what is this signal processing Rackmode? Well, let's check it out. Cherry Audio being more of a boutique sort of audio technology company, but they do, as I say, make some very impressive analog software emulation. So Cherry Audio is delighted to announce the release of its latest effects plugin, the Rackmode Signal Processors. And Rackmode is a bundle of 8 plugins that replicate the classic rack-mounted Moog signal processors of the late 70s and 80s, and includes the Rackmode vocoder instrument and effects version, Rackmode phaser, Rackmode ring modulator. Now I'm going to show you that ring modulator is something else. We're going to have a listen to that. We're going to listen to all of these. Rackmode string filter, Rackmode frequency shifter, Rackmode graphic EQ, and the Rackmode parametric EQ. So what is it based on, the Rackmode? It is a stack of historic proportions. So in the late 70s and early 80s, Moog, then owned by Norland Music Inc., wanted to extend their reach further into the production studio, and one effort was the Signal Processor family of rack-mounted products, featuring the 16-voice, channel voice, 12-stage phaser, and the 10-band graphic and 3-band parametric EQs. Other related rack products were the frequency shifter and ring modulator, based on the designs of pioneer Harold Bode, and the singular string filter created by Moog's custom engineering group. That's a very interesting sounding filter, by the way. And the Moog signal processors have found a place in production facilities worldwide, both past and present. Artists like Wendy Carlos, Yellow Magic Orchestra, Tangerine Dream, John Carpenter, one of my favorite John Carpenter, love his soundtrack. in the Big Trouble in Little China soundtrack. Genesis, Jan Hammer, Mouse on Mars, and Coldplay have used them to shape their distinctive sounds, and producers as diverse as Giorgio Moroder, Mike Elizondo, I'm butchering these names I'm sure, Sylvia Massey have cited these black boxes as treasured parts of their studio gear. And today these units are increasingly scarce and fetch prices for above their original value, and that is if they can be found at all. So making sounds effective, our Rackmode signal processors bundled represent the first time this entire line of renowned analog treasures has been recreated as faithfully as virtual instruments. Rackmode also marks our latest collaboration with award-winning synth designer and DSP legend Mark Barton, who modeled the circuit precise emulations based on the original rack-mounted hardware. The 8 Rackmode signal processors plugins include the Rackmode vocoder. So the Rackmode vocoder includes 2 versions for this 16-channel classic and instrument plugin with a built-in polyphonic dual oscillator and an effects plugin to modify other input formats and DAW track for unlimited processing flexibility. You got the Rackmode phaser, which is based on the definitive 12-stage original known for its lush, sweeping textures. Rackmode ring modulator based on Moog's Harrod board ring modulator with squelch control, of course. Gotta love a bit of squelch control. Rackmode string filter. This effect utilizes filter arrays that mimic acoustic string instruments, drawing from the extremely rare system created by Moog's custom engineering group. Rackmode frequency shifter mixes 2 external inputs or side chains, a signal input with its own built-in oscillator, and the frequency shifter creates colorful, often metallic effects by modifying the ratio of incoming frequency components. And Rackmode graphic EQ, 10 selectable frequency bands with drive and gain controls capable of creating exotic effects when used with other instruments and effects. And Rackmode parametric EQ, 3 bands for sculpting low, mid, and high frequency ranges. Very, very nice sounding EQs, by the way. So back to the future, we have expanded these effects with additional features aimed at today's music producers, including presets, LFOs, stereo processing, and full Apple Silicon M1 native support. And speaking of authenticity, these effects capture not only the deep sounds and capabilities of the original signal processor line, but also the elegant look and heritage of the rack-mounted enclosures. Cherry Audio's Rackmode signal processors collections represent a first-time opportunity for producers to explore these studio-quality vintage effects when combined with today's modern production workflow. Experimentation will lead to inspiring, and an old approach to sound can unexpectedly result in something completely new. All right, enough of the talk here. I think we get the idea. These are unbelievable sounding emulation, analog emulation. Oh, just one last thing here, the price. So at the moment, you can get all of these, the bundle basically for $99 USD, which is only works out to $13 a plugin. That's really, really good value. And it comes in VST3, you got Apple M1 Silicon support, you got VST AU and AAX. And let's just check it out. Let's get stuck into it. So it is good value and is a really, really, really good sounding emulated effects here. So I've got an Ableton Live session here. I got a little funky ditty. I hope I haven't got one on at the moment. No, we don't have anything here in the rack mod. Just gonna pop. Let me just pop over my recording software too, just make sure we're rolling in the background there. Okay, good. Here we are back. Ableton Live, loving it large. All right, so here's my little ditty, little funky ditty I was working on. So we got a disco beat here. I tried to keep it interesting for you guys. Come on. Some samples going, choppy, just really light chopped samples. Some vocal chops in there as well. Alright, so we get the idea. We got a little funky tune here. So let's have a look at Rackmode and let's listen to the first one here, the frequency shifter. Of course, we'll put it on the master channel. Let's just get the most deepest effects we can. It's gonna oscillate out, but let's have a listen. We can try it on just drums or the samples. Let's have a listen. Alright, so we got our frequency shifter. It's gonna sound pretty crazy here. We can change the shift amount. Actually, you know what this might sound better on is if we just pop that on our samples. There, we still got our bass and drums going. That's better. Probably wasn't good idea on the master. So just playing with the shift amount there. You've got your noise gate here, your scale, you've got your mix. You can really dial in between A and B, regeneration, input level, and you've got your power on and off here, which is basically just a bypass, and your modulation down here. Now, it did say when we were reading it back that some of these features were added or are new to this particular instrument effects plugin. And I'd dare say, I could be completely wrong, maybe this modulation here is a modern sort of after, thing that's been added. I don't know what's going on. My vocabulary is going out the window today. But yeah, let's have this little ditty. It sounds pretty good, actually, depending on what you apply it to, of course. Gives it almost wah-wah. I'd have it down here. How good's that? And this preset's have a drink, We'll go through some more presets. Yeah, you're going to get that metallic sound, though. That's nice. That's really nice. Oh, you can mix your modulation with your shift amount there. That's cool. And then, where was we had a wet dry. Oh, you got mono as well. Oh, yeah. So if you pop the scale up, you're going to get obviously your upper frequencies. Like a resonance almost sounding of filter. Anyway, I think this tune does this justice. It's real funky, and we're adding in some funky effects. All right, let's move along. So you've got a Rackmode graphic EQ here as well. I'm going to add this onto my chain here, and it's a really nice sounding EQ. I'm actually going to bypass the frequency shifter just for a sec. Have a listen to this EQ. Actually, we will pop this one on the master because that will get instant gratification. All right, so here we got it on the master. So, you can obviously dial in it's really nice. You can do your classic, what is it? The smile, classic smile. They used to say this was good. I don't think so, but classic smile EQ on your graphic EQ. So it's supposed to be like a smile sort of up and down like that. But that sounds terrible to me. I mean, the bass sounds good. I'd probably have the mids up a bit. And then you got a bunch of presets, really, really nice sounding EQ. You got piano, you can go through different piano, scorch, smile. Oh, there is a smile. There you go. There already was a smile in there. Snares. Actually, let's try that on our drums. Here we go. Pop it on our drums. Here we go. Oh yeah. Bypass that. That's cool. That highlights the snare for sure. Oh yeah, it's beautiful. What other drum things do we have? Snare too? Alright, anyway, we get the idea. It's a very nice sounding EQ. And then, of course, we have the Rackmode parametric EQ as well. And this is also a very nice sounding EQ. I don't know if it uses the same engine, but you can, of course, increase your width on your Q, your frequency there. I'm over the, I'm on the master here. Isn't that a nice sounding EQ? Freaking really nice sounding EQ. And then you got a bunch of presets as well. Big upright. You could probably apply this on your master. Do have a drum bus there, electric piano. Now I'm putting it on our master just to get the most extreme effect for you guys, just so you can hear it there. Let's jump back over to our samples that we got going here. I'm going to chuck the phaser on now. Let's have a listen to this phaser. And here it is here. Really good sounding emulations. Let's mix it up a bit for you guys. Big gain down here. I'm just playing with the chunk of funk, it's called. Oh, this is mad. I can get right into this. Should we try it with our frequency shifter as well? Whoa, okay, probably too much. Might be too much. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. That's a really nice sounding filter. Phaser, sorry, not a filter. But that's really giving it that wow sort of sound. I actually really like that. I'll probably just keep that on there. And then, of course, we've got the ring modulator. Now, this is where things are just going to get really messed up. I'll pop it on my drums. But as you know, it's a very good sounding ring modulator, but it's, wow, it's powerful sounding. Here we go. So this is on the drums. You can change your waveform, you get your threshold. I mean, you could drop some random effects in. I mean, if you just want to mess your track up, we'll just have drums here. Wow. Wow. So full voltage control oscillator over here, your frequency mod in the middle, and your squelch. Gotta have your squelch. How funny is that? That's nuts. Imagine you'd start the track like this. And then introduce our little synthy bits here. And flick it off when you're ready. That's hilarious. That is actually really cool, and it's very powerful. Bunch of presets. I know I'm not going deep on these plugins here today, but basically they are designed for exactly what I'm doing here today. They're designed for just helping you with, you know, getting inspiration and just playing with the knobs. I mean, this is what these things were. It's not about being fully technical. It is about just playing with each little thing. What does it do? What is it changing? You obviously got your threshold here, the amount you can dial in, and then you've got in the voltage controlled oscillator, you can really ramp it up to more coarse or more fine. You just got to play with it. Like, I'm not going to go deep on these plugins here for you today, but the main thing is I want you to be able to hear how authentic and how awesome these things sound. All right, the last one here is the last one we're going to look at today, because we're not going to show the vocoder on here. I'm going to do on the YouTube channel, if you haven't subscribed already, subscribe to Emlyn in the Mix on YouTube. Shame on you if you listen to this podcast and you haven't subscribed. That is just awful. Oh no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, definitely subscribe, because we're going to do we'll do some new updated videos on the Rackmode, because I want to explore the vocoder as well. The vocoder, in my opinion, is one of the nicest sounding, very authentic emulation. So this is the last one we're going to look at here for the podcast today anyway, is the string filter. And yeah, this is a very interesting sound. So I've applied it to the whole track. Yeah, wow. What is going on? We'll go through some of the presets here. Dense resonance. How incredible is it? I'll turn it off. Jeez. Wow. It's one of the nicest, interesting filters. I've just introduced something. Put a bit of keys there. One of the most interesting sounding filters. Whoa. Let's put the bass back in. Wow. That is an incredible sounding filter. So you got your frequency, your resonance here as well. It's just such a different sounding filter, string filter. I'm not familiar with what it is about this string filter, but it just has an incredible incredible sound. Now I will cover in a future video more on the Rackmode. We'll do a bit more of an in-depth dive, but for today's video and for today's podcast, more just an overview. Wanted to show you these just got released, and they're an incredible sounding effects bundle. Like if you've ever played with Sound Toys or any of those sort of plugins, these are up there. In fact, I would take these to the next level. I've always loved what Cherry Audio do. And my verdict, I can give you my opinion now. These are some of the hottest analog emulated effects plugins I've ever heard. Without a word of a lie, they just have the best sound. I think they've got something going on over at Cherry Audio where they're just getting it right, getting the software right to work with today's computers. Everything works really nice and doesn't use up too much CPU. They're not CPU hungry at all, and they really faithfully recreate that analog emulation. Anyway, I'm gonna have to leave it there for you guys today because I'm having way too much fun. The other problem with this, playing with these sort of plugins and doing a podcast, is I get lost and I don't know how I'm mesmerizing or hypnotizing you with this little ditty that I made here. I hopefully haven't bored you to death, but you can hear what these plugins actually do. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me here on Emlyn in the Mix, Season 3, Episode 8. Bit of a fun one for you. Thank you, and shout outs to Cherry Audio for supporting the podcast and YouTube video today. And if you like what you saw here today, please consider leaving some feedback. You can do that in the podcast app. Simply scroll down, go to the podcast app right now, wherever you listen to this podcast. I'm pretty sure you can scroll down and you can leave a review. Really want to get your feedback. Leave me a review. 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars, 1 star, 2 star, 5 star being amazing, 1 star being terrible. Please leave us your feedback and share your thoughts on what you thought about the podcast. Also, you can leave a comment in the comment section below. If I read all the comments, if you want to talk about this or discuss any of the topics that we've looked at today. Also, would love your support. There's a support link below. Shout me a coffee. All funds go back to this podcast and distributing this podcast worldwide and ensuring that this podcast is still here in 1 billion years. That's right. You heard it here first on Emlyn in the Mix. Some space aliens in the future are going to be listening to this podcast thanks to you and shouting me a coffee. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I'm back next week with episode 9. All right. Peace out. Boom.